It turns out that meeting the director can bring more than just admission to the university. It seems that he is also dating her daughter Ayaka. The only strange thing about Noka is that he rides on the same bus with Ayaka and sits next to her in class. Despite the fact that they are sitting next to each other, they have never spoken to each other, and it seems that they live in completely different worlds. Everyone is hovering around her like hungry ducks, and he is almost invisible. One day he accidentally drops an eraser and Ayaka picks it up, and we all know what that means for the members of the Ayaka fan club. They drag him out of the classroom, throw him on the floor and start beating him like the cannon fodder that he is, and tell him to never force the princess to do anything for him again. After he was spanked, he goes to the staff room to help because today he is on duty, but then some girl comes up to him and takes his papers. You might think that this is the beginning of a romantic anime, but no, she is just one of Ayaka's slaves and wants to hold Hanako away from her because Ayaka also studies in the oak tree. That's how his school days usually become a minor character in Ayaka's story. One day after school, he goes to throw out the trash and thinks about what his life is all about. Suddenly he notices an obviously sinister toe rabbit face in the trash can and takes it out to see what it is on the toe's belly. A note will be clear today, but some school publications may collapse. He thinks it's a joke from a 4th grader, but then a huge shadow appears on the floor and he looks up to see the school tower with the clock falling on him. He thinks that he will end up in some world where he will be a hero and will meet beautiful girls, and suddenly notes that in this life he has never even held a girl's hand. The building collapses on him, and this ends the first season of Witchcraft. At least that's what he thinks. But then he opens his eyes and finds himself in the arms of none other than Ayaka herself, and looks at her dress, in which costume he starts to panic like a wimp, but Ayaka tells him to stop twitching, otherwise he will fall. He doesn't understand what she's talking about and looks down to see that they are hovering over a broom in the distance. A girl with cat ears looks at them, thinks that Ayaka is a witch, and then snaps her fingers, ordering two large toe rabbit soldiers in armor to attack them. Ayaka throws the Hano into the air and then jumping back to dodge their attack and burns them with a fire spell before landing on his feet and catching one like a princess and getting a close-up of the tiny toe soldier rabbits getting up and charging at them with their swords. Ayaka knocks them down with fireballs and then engages them in close combat using her broom and a spell. She talks about Noki staying close to her, but he decides to do the opposite like an idiot and turns around to see a girl with cat ears who waits to him from behind the building and calls him to her. He thinks that it must be Ayaka's friend and runs towards her, but finds himself surrounded by an army of toe rabbit soldiers who immediately grab his hands and force him to his knees. One of the soldiers comes up to him with an axe and they prepare to turn him into a successor almost without for the next Harry Potter movie. He thinks that this is a dream, but then Ayaka jumps and sets all the soldiers on fire, saving him like the real heroine she was supposed to be. Hanako still thinks it's a dream and keeps shooting, saying that she is beautiful even in his dreams and that she would never waste time on him, let alone save him, like a hybrid of Harry Potter and Sailor Moon. She tells him that this is her mission and that he must be confused, but he has nothing to worry about because she will protect him. He asks why, and she answers because he is her princess Nani. Hanako girl, this is confirmed. Hanako wonders the same question and begins to doubt his gender, but then Ayaka reminds him that their anime is not set in 2023 and now there are still only 2 genders. Then she tells him to just let her protect him, but he notices that part of her hair is on fire and wonders if it was because of him that she got hurt. He asks her why she covered for her and that it was his fault for being stupid and being deceived even after she was. He needs to be in pain closer to her. He says that it's all because her hair burned and that it's a gift from God, but then he stops talking and realizes that he's actually a pervert and also starts to look after her after so many years of bullying from her Simpsons. He's now also turned to the dark side without realizing it. While he's thinking about how very disappointed in himself, he notices that one of the toe soldiers gets up to attack her from behind. He remembers what he saw Sasuke doing on the bridge on Rue and jumps in front of her, taking the hit. He thinks that he would look as cool as him and would say that his body moved on its own, but he passed out before he could even say his line. Ayaka comes up to him and hugs him gently, and I'm sure you all know why I said a soft hug and not just a hug. Seeing how hurt he is, Ayaka gets furious and says that she should have turned them all into ashes, and then uses her strongest spell, Million Clover, and completely destroys all the enemies with a powerful fire attack later that day. Hinoka opens her eyes in Ayaka's room at school and she tells him that it was not a dream and that she will explain everything later, and now they need to go home. They return together and Ayaka explains that for now the only thing he has to know is her duty to protect him because he is her master. He asks what she means, and she just walks next to him for a while. They don't talk. A few days later everything looks normal, but this time he is instead a minor character, causes the jealousy and hatred of others when Ayaka decides to sit next to him on the bus on the way to school. After that they go to class together and Hinoka feels that he will be killed if he stays next to her for even a second. He pretends that his stomach hurts and runs out into the street, but he is caught by a gang of hooligans. They grab him by the collar and tell him to know his place and are about to beat him up, but then Ayaka comes up and tells them to let him go. She entices Tai and says everyone that will eat anyone who tries to hurt him again. Later during lunch, she sits next to Hanai and several girls from the fan club. She feeds him herself and says that the Hanaka herself cooked it. Feels happy that he is being treated this way, but cannot get rid of the feeling that the other 20 girls sitting next to him are not happy with him. He thinks that he is ruining their fun, gets up and says that he will go eat alone. Hearing this, Ayaka becomes furious and, looking down, sets fire to everything that is standing on table. Kanaka, on the other hand, feels guilty for being rude to her and goes into the courtyard where the building fell on him. He notices that everything has returned to its place and nothing is broken. At that moment he turns around and sees a girl with cat ears standing next to him. She tells him that the building did not fall for real and that she is finally convinced that he is spineless since he did not notice anything. She approaches him dressed in a witch costume and introduces herself how his dad from the witch's tower. She says that she came to kidnap him and orders her soldiers to attack them. This time they are not just toy soldiers, they pierce her with spears and swords from all sides. After the battle, the Kanaka opens her eyes and sees that Ayaka is all covered in holes from swords and mines, so many of them that he can't count. She asks him if he's okay, and he wonders how this girl is even alive. He becomes ashamed of his weakness and he says that he will believe in her, but now he needs to call an ambulance, and Ayaka says that if he wants to make amends, he must promise that he will not run away from her tomorrow during lunch. He agrees and says that she is bleeding heavily, but she replies that she is made of fire and everything will be fine. Then she tells him to close his eyes and not move and uses her magic to send all the soldiers flying. She burns them to the ground and then goes up to there but holding Hinoka in her arms like a princess. She tells her that now he will fry her furry ass and launches a powerful fire spell at it, but but calls his soldiers and barely manages to escape before her ass catches fire. After that she tells Hano to open his eyes and to his surprise everything becomes as before, clean and tidy without any damage. They both return home and end their day there. The next morning 5 new students transferred to their school, and to their surprise it was none other how her priest and her witch friends a few days have passed, and Hinoka continues to ask Ayaka why is their priest and others chasing him, and what kind of witchcraft is this. One morning he decides not to stop asking her until she answers, but notices that day she was not on the same bus with him. He leaves the school, changes his shoes and goes to class, but there he sees that Ayaka is having fun with the new students. He looks at the board and sees that he is actually in the torture club, and instead of wondering why there is such a club at school, asks how he got here. Ayaka replies that she bewitched him so that he would subconsciously come here instead of his class and they could meet. Then she turns to the girls and says that this is a witch hunt and that she decided to get rid of them because they could pose a threat to him. He wonders if this is true and watches them fight for their lives. He asks her to at least take the gags out of their mouths so that they can talk, and Ayaka does so. She says that she wanted to finish them off earlier, but one of them escaped, so she used them as bait to lure her out. Hano VK comes up to their priest and asks why they are hunting him, and she replies that it's no wonder that Miss Kind Soul didn't tell him anything and that she just wants his body and that white substance inside of him. After hearing this he blushes and thinks that he heard everything correctly, but Ayaka tells him not to believe everything that they tell him. The enemies there. The priest asks why they are so calm, because they still need to catch the last member of their team, and then some kind of black viscous liquid begins to drip from the ceiling, which soon completely envelops them. May appears from this liquid and frees her friends. Then she kidnaps the Hanaka and disappears with him into the floor below them. leaving her for friends to deal with the Ayaka. She rejoices at her successful escape but forgets that she is just a minor villain and more of a comic character and an antagonist plot. Soon Ayaka destroys the floor and looks down at her, and the rest of the witches are lying on the ground. She comes down and goes to MEI, but Ta tells her to hold her horses, otherwise her Wolf will bite off Hanako's head. Yes, I don't understand why they are also up in arms on his neck, and Daka tells him that there is nothing to worry about. She will fry this woman, and continues to walk forward. MEI gets up holding Hanako hostage and orders her Wolf to bite him on the neck to warn Ayaka no. Instead of getting angry, Ayaka sets it on fire and throws it aside, allowing Hanako to escape. Surprisingly, there is nothing wrong with his neck and the Wolf bite remains on Ayaka's neck. Seeing this, Mei runs away and her friends also retreat. Later that day, Hanako opens his eyes in Ayaka's class and sees that she is wearing a scarf around her neck. Although it is summer, she apologizes to him and says that she wanted him to live a normal, quiet life, but if this continues, the witches of the tower will haunt him. Then she says that in order to get their old life back, they must do something themselves and defeat the one who is behind all this. But the problem is that she doesn't know who it could be. After listening to her, he thinks about everything that is happening and understands that it is his fault that she got hurt and hides her wound under a scarf. He asks her to tell him everything and make him her student because he no longer wants her to fight alone. Meanwhile, somewhere in a cafe, the headmistress of the school and the mother of Ayaka Kazan meet so her longtime rival and villainous Krom, where after a 30-year hiatus Kronmar tells her that she found out that Medusa's students got into a fight with her people and she might want to join in the fun. Later that weekend, Hanako receives a call from Ayaka. She asks him to meet her outside. He thinks it's like a date, but in reality she's just telling him the truth about witches and everything he asked about. She says they'll go to school, stop at a cafe on the way for something to eat. On the way to his destination, Ayaka tells him a story about witches and explains that in this world there are two types of witches: artisans, protectors of this world. They create workshops in places where people gather and build cities. Their task is to ensure that magic in this world is not used for evil, and they open workshops in different spheres and live there. That's why they are called witches artisans. On the other side of the witches' tower are selfish people who do not obey any laws. They use their magic for selfish purposes and often harm others. Then she says that if it falls into their hands, the world will end and everyone will die. After that, they go to a cafe and place an order. When the order is ready, the waitress approaches then and starts talking to Ayaka. A high-voice Ayaka looks at her with irritation, but listens to everything that she says and notices that Connor is in the city and more tower witches are coming. Here Hanyupa notices that the girl is actually the vice president of the student council and that she is also a witch of the artisan like Ayaka. When Ayaka finishes her drink, they leave the cafe. They go to the mall to buy clothes. While she goes shopping, Hanako Namas, a cute girl, helps a lost child and comes up to her. The girl looks at him, takes out a notebook and confirms that this is the same guy with the photo. Then she kicks the lost child as the NPC jumps over the Kanaka with a sword and turns out to be the tower, which his friends also come up from behind and attack Ayaka. Ayaka sets them on fire and jumps forward to save her boyfriend, the prince. One of the tower witches uses American-style firearms and starts shooting at them with a pistol. In response, Ayaka uses the bulletproof Kate bullet technique in the style of Batman and deflects all the bullets. After that, she gets up, copies Ace's fire attack and Nadira, this behind them, then comes up to them holding her woe prince in her arms and lets them go as Agent SE. Having finished their business in the mall, they go to school and Kanaka apologizes to her for dragging her into all this. He asks if it would be better to just lock him up or put him under lock and key, but she says that he shouldn't worry about it and that she will always protect him. After that, she tells him to study hard because being her student will not be easy. After hearing this, Ano is happy and decides to become stronger. Soon they come to the school and Ayaka says that the school is actually one of the workshops and then takes him to the principal's office and introduces him to Kazane's mother. Kazane scolds Ayaka for destroying the shopping center and says that in the workshop witches are not supposed to spoil other people's property, and then Hannah says that according to the tradition of witches, students are introduced to their mentors on the first day, so she brought him here. The next day, Ayaka takes Hanako for training, but according to on the way, they are attacked there by a pod, and her team Rocket Canas asks if this is a good idea because Ayaka is practically invincible and they're the Pop answers that they will attack her at a fast pace, that is, they will just attack her. Ayaka tells Noki to be careful and then sends these brainless idiots flying just like their Pokemon. It is obvious that Hanaka has not learned anything after that. They return to school and Hanaka opens his locker, but it is flooded a wave of threats and hateful letters. Someone even planted a voodoo doll on him. Ayaka notices that this must be the work of her fans and that he shouldn't worry because they won't hurt him anymore. Despite this, he notices the hateful looks of others when he sits next to her, prepares for exams with her, plays sports games, and even goes to school and back with the princess whom everyone admires. After school, Hanaka is going to practice magic, but Ayaka goes with him to the bus stop and says that he knows how tired he is. So today they will rest. They get on the bus and go home, but on the way, Ayaka notices a flying magic fish in front and looks at the destination, which changes from the nearest stop to a dead end. She immediately gets up, turns around, and sees that Chrono Wave is sitting in the back seat. The whole bus is empty. There is not even a driver, and the bus moves with the help of her magic. She tells the Hanak to stay in place and turns to Ramna, who comes up to her and introduces herself. Ayaka is about to release a fire spell, but Chrono Wave stops her using her dictator magic. Then she casts a powerful spell on her, but as she expected, there is not a scratch on. Ayaka looks at this and says that no matter how many times they try to kill her, nothing will happen to her. Then she approaches Hanoe and simply stabs him in the stomach. Kana falls to his knees and begins to cry, but she tells him to stop acting like he's in pain and get on his feet. Kanov doesn't understand what she's saying, but then he realizes that he's not hurt and his body really wasn't hurt. At that moment, Ayaka falls to the ground and Nof notices that she's bleeding from the same place where he was wounded. Crenoir tells him that it's because a special ability called damage transfer, thanks to which, while they are nearby, any of his wounds are transferred to her. She explains that she has this ability because of a contract with him that allows her to use his power to become an invincible witch, but at the same time, she must protect him from any dangers. Then she tells him that if he wants to save her, he must give her more of his power using the white substance inside himself, and she knows that he does not think about what you all think about. She talks about the spirit that lives inside him like the nine-tailed fox from Naruto. She gives him a magic candy and says that if he eats it, he will be able to reveal his true power. Then she tries to force him to eat the candy by force. But Ayaka won't let some fat pervert steal her first kiss, so she releases a stream of green flame and pushes him away. Yes, all this happens thanks to the plot armor. Then she tells Noki that for a while she will turn into someone else and take away some of his magic and become herself hot mom. In the series, with green flames and the power of a dragon, she instantly overpowers the crow and pierces her barrier, hitting her in the throat. But then Nara's cream makes her retreat and leaves them at the bus stop. Hinoka wakes up first and sees that Ayaka's wound has healed, but she doesn't wake up. He takes her to the hospital and the nurse says that she's just tired and will wake up soon. After that, he returns home, finds a wrapped candy in his pocket and realizes that it's the one, the magic sphere that Moore tried to give him. He decides to hide it from Ayaka and puts it in a box in case he needs it. He also thinks about what Crenoir said about Ayaka's contract with him. And doesn't that mean that he knew her before they met at school? The next day, Ayaka rents the entire gym for Noki's training. She gives him his own equipment for which training and explains how to pole. She tells him to try to jump higher and he tries. To his surprise, he feels much lighter and can jump almost to the roof of the gym. Then she catches him when he lands and asks him to repeat. The Nova picks it up and notices that it is very light and says that when they take off the robe their body becomes lighter. Then she stretches her right hand forward and turns her wrist a little and a magic broom appears in her hands. She tells him that brooms are stored in cloaks and they can be summoned by doing this. Like this, Pano will try to do the same, but he only manages to cause disappointment when the broom does not appear. At that moment, Ayaka's alarm clock rings and she says that time is up. Suddenly the door opens and many students come into the hall and Kanov begins to panic and says that they need to hide, otherwise they will be seen in these outfits. But to his surprise, no one pays attention to him, and he wonders if he has become so transparent that they don't even look at him. But Yaka says that this is because of the robes they wear and there is a spell on them that does not give other people their notice, and they subconsciously avoid them when they pass by. Then they go out and she asks if he is afraid of heights and then grabs him and rides on a broom high into the sky. She says that they will practice flying like this until he learns to control the broom, and explains that usually witches patrol the territory to make sure that everything is in order in their sector. In addition, in their school there are always 5 strong witches who patrol the territory to make sure that the school is safe to fly a little, and even took a nap Ayaka them back to school. But on the way, Hanoka stopped her, showed her down, and said that the child was being bullied and robbed and they had to stop it. But Ayaka told him that this was a matter for the police, and their job was to protect the city from evil witches, and they did not interfere in the affairs of ordinary people, because they should never know about their existence. And Nupa doesn't believe it and summons her broom and jumps off of it, and barely manages to save the situation without falling to her death, and then crashes right into the Wu and knocks them down like in a car accident. They all attack him, but Ayaka appears in time and burns them to the ground with her magic. And Nupa asks why they didn't attack ordinary people, and she replies that they were witches, so they were able to notice him even though he was wearing a robe. It turns out the girl who was robbed is called Hanaka. She is Kasumi's friend from the same school and is not a witch, so she didn't see how it all happened. Meanwhile, in the city of Rotenburg, we see that the jellyfish is under the strictest security that the city can provide. Somehow she manages to break the seal and escape from prison, and the first whom she decides to visit are her students. The team there is a pop of rockets, but before she meets them, we see that the Popa and her friends are sitting in a restaurant and coming up with a plan on how to catch the Hanao. And defeating Ayaka is a difficult task because one of them is practically invincible and the other constantly releases pheromones that bind him to him like a pet. During the discussion, Rin stop attacking Ayaka altogether and wait until Hanaka is left alone and then capture him. They decide to go along with this plan, but before leaving, Remora comes up to them and says that she would like to join their little plan. The next morning, Hanaka wakes up and goes downstairs to wash up and get ready for school. His sister Kasumi greets him and helps him style his hair with a comb and a hairdryer. At the same time, she asks him about the call he received from a girl last weekend. He doesn't want to tell her that the hottest girl in their school calls him a master. So Sora decides and says that it was just a bell system in their class and the girl's number was the first on the list, and she called him to tell him that on Monday, it will have a fun day. Kasumi wonders if this is true and asks why he left so quickly after the call, and he begins sweating. He comes up with another excuse, but she catches up with him and says that she can easily burn his hair with a hairdryer at maximum power. She says that she knows that he met with Ayaka and that she also heard about it because they study at the same school, and that she is often bullied because her brother BC spends time with the princess. She asks what kind of relationship they have. He doesn't know what to answer, but then their mom Komachi says that breakfast is ready and Kasumi lets him go, saying that in the evening will go into his room to talk. Meanwhile, Ayaka is waiting for Kanaka at the bus stop and she is attacked by 3 witches from the gang there. But after breakfast, Kanaka remembers that today he needed to meet with Ayaka earlier and runs to the bus stop. While running, he stumbles over the trap that their Buddha and her toe soldier rabbits have set on the road. They grab him and throw him to the ground, and she says that now her friends are beating Ayaka up half dead because they know her weak point. It turns out that the Kroner told them the secret of Ayaka's invulnerability and the fact that if you separate her from Hanako, he will become weaker. At that moment, 2 of her soldiers are carried into space by a huge leg. Their butt wonders where they went, but then she raises her head and sees a huge tow bear playing with her soldiers. It turns out that this is all Kasumi's tricks, and she is also a witch from the workshop. Their dad got angry with her for ruining their plan, which finally succeeded, and attacked her with a huge soldier, and soon a clash of the titans ensued between them. The rabbit and the bear fight each other, but the titan bear manages to knock down the carrot eater. When it seems that the bear will win, the rabbit strikes back with puppy eyes, or better yet, with rabbit eyes, and takes the bear by surprise by attacking his eyes. They continue to fight using techniques from wrestling. The bear tries to type rabbit into the ground and then throws him onto the wires like Goku spinning around him. The rabbit falls, but then using gloves with spikes, poisonous gas strikes back. In the end, they both hit each other with a left hook, but the bear manages to strike first and throws the rabbit to the ground. At this moment, a wild skeletal Tyrannosaurus appears and uses a grapple. Kasumi turns around to see what it is. Pokemon her and fight 2 against 1, but Kasumi uses her secret technique, surprise strike, and turns her bear into a colossal titan. Then she crushes the rabbit and the skeleton with her foot and ends up destroying more buildings. and the 911 terrorists after that she gets off her bear and approaches Hano, who was sitting on the ground and looked at it dreaming of popcorn. Hanako asks what it was and she asks who he thinks protected him all these years, and the princess wasn't there when she heard the princess. Hanako takes her hand and says that they need to save Ayaka, but Kasumi replies that this monster cow doesn't need to be saved, but only healed, and points to her sitting on a bear's paw and reading a book of Araka. Then she talks about Jack, that they agreed that she will protect him when he is home on holidays and weekends, and she will be in charge of the bus and school, but she took him with her on the weekend, while they argue about who will look after him. He realizes that everything that Kasumi said in the morning about her being bullied and that she doesn't know anything about Jack was a lie, and she says that she was just teasing him like a little sister should. Then she talks about Jack, that the headmistress told them that there are now more than 30 witches in the city, but they are not doing anything, which means something will happen soon, so be on the lookout. Meanwhile, we see how Kazunai turns on the TV and sees that half of the city is destroyed due to the battle of Kasumi, and there is a priest and thinks how much more money will she have to spend to cover the damage, and Yaka says that maybe she would like to protect Hanako 24/7 and that they should move to her on the other side of the Riemann War is preparing something while he orders his croc. The boy captures all the witches in the city and gathers them in his base at the same time. Kazan receives a call from Rothenberg, who informs her about the escape of the Medusa, and next day Ayaka goes to Hanako's mother and Kasumi to ask her for permission to keep Hanako with her for 24 hours. To their surprise, their mother, Kamashi, immediately agrees and begins to tell them a story from her childhood. She says that when she was in high school, she became friends with a strong girl called the Dragon's Tooth. This girl was none other than Ayaka, Kazan's mother. They became such good friends that they decided to get married, but this was before 2023, so they had to marry men and end up promising that their children would marry each other. This means that Ayaka and Hanako were engaged before they were born. After hearing all this, Kasumi refuses to leave it like that and says that she will not let her Anachan leave. Komachi tells her that she must grow up and that she still insists on to stay with him and forces him to do anything for her. She says that this is her right as a little sister, and when all else fails, Komachi pushes her to the ground, pins her down, and tells Noki to pack her things and run away. After that they both leave, and Ayaka asks him if he minds living with her alone. He says that there is no guy in the world who would not want to live with her. Feel free to leave your comments in the review section, and then says that for some reason it makes him nostalgic. Ayaka tries to finish his thoughts, saying that it seems like we have known each other for a long time, but for some reason we can't remember when it was. She says that she also has foggy memories, that the only difference between them is that she remembers her mission to protect him at the cost of her life. She says that in her opinion someone with the same power as theirs made them like this, and it seemed to be planned. Soon her car arrives and the driver opens the door for them. Kanaka understands that being the daughter of the school principal means being very rich. They come to her house, more precisely at her mansion. They are met by hundreds of maids, and Ayaka says that her room is not on one of the top floors, so they will take the elevator going up. Hanako wonders who lives in 40 about a one-story house, and they arrive at Ayaka's room. They open the door and go in, but they discover that the 3 maids who were supposed to meet them have turned into stone, and behind them stands a jellyfish and says that she is tired of waiting for them. Ayaka goes inside and tells Noki that he should stay on the 12th floor and closes the elevator door behind him. Ayaka turns into a fire magician and begins to fight the snake with all his might. Meanwhile, on the other side of the door, Hanoka is perplexed why Ayaka told him to leave. After all, before, she always asked him for strength to be near. He thinks that this is because the enemy is very strong and says that if Ayaka goes too far, he will lose his invulnerability. Therefore, instead to do what she said, he will do what he does best, will not listen to orders. At this moment, the elevator door melts and Ayaka falls to the floor. She tells Hano to take his broom and run because in the battle scenes he is just cannon fodder who dies as collateral damage. However, the jellyfish has other plans and uses her curse to turn Ayaka into a stone. Hanoka asks her to let Ayaka go and promises to do whatever she says. Medusa replies that she can't do this because she's not as stupid as him. Hanako remembers that he still has in his pocket the candy that he took with him when they decided to live together. He takes it out and breaks the seal, releasing a white substance, and suddenly a white-haired beauty similar to a vampire appears in the room and introduces herself as a white princess. Vermilion Minusta rushes straight at her, but Vermilion throws her out of the building with an explosion building and demonstrates part of his power in this attack. Meanwhile, Kazane looks out the window to rest after a hard day of work and sees how her multi-million-dollar empire is turning into ruins. She thinks that this must be the work of Medusa and calls her assistant to gather all the witches in the city and track down the snake on the other side. Vermilion tells Hano that Ayaka turned into a stone because he did not believe in her power, and in order to remove the curse from her, he must believe in her again and have feelings for her. To put it simply, he needs to kiss her like Snow White to wake her up. After that, she disappears and tells him that he needs to be careful so that he doesn't have to call her at this moment. The jellyfish returns and this time brings with her students and the team there. Hanaka's but kisses Ayaka, removes the stone seal from her, and during the fight stays next to her. How glued Ayaka destroys the team with one blow there, but and then fights with the jellyfish one-on-one. They fight on equal terms and jellyfish again tries to turn her into stone, but Ayaka simply breaks through her defense with the power of fire of love and armor during the battle. Hanoka gets very tired and falls asleep hugging Ayaka in the air. This is called clinging to yes. Later that night he wakes up in the school infirmary and sees that Ayaka is sitting next to him. He asks if this is a dream. She says that everything was for real and pulls back the curtain behind which jellyfish and her students are lying on the next bed. Hanoka starts to panic, but Ayaka says that she will explain everything later, but they will no longer attack then. After that she again draws the curtains and kisses Kon and says that now it's her turn. Later they decide to return to his house because her house literally exploded. Kasumi leaves for the night to complete Kazan's task, and Ayaka and Hanaka return home to his mother. The next morning Kasumi returns home after unsuccessfully searching for a jellyfish all night. She decides to go to Hano's room and finds Hiraku, who sits on him, and Rasma his seal. She is angry that her mother allowed Ayaka to stay with him and rudely answers her at breakfast. Komachi cannot stand it and becomes depressed. Hano scolds her for being a bad daughter and makes her apologize, but it is too late and Komachi just lies in bed and does not talk to anyone. Hanaka calls to work and says that she is sick and will not come, and then leaves for school before everyone else. In the school there is a meeting of the student council and the Ayaka fan club. The president, she's going crazy because it's been 2 weeks since the Hanaka got close to the princess and no one does anything. She turns to the vice president, but she also refuses and tells her to calm down because Ayaka herself said that she will not tolerate if someone hurts the Hanaka. After hearing this, the president turns to his advisor and teacher in natural sciences, Kyoten Shoyu, and tells him that she knows that he is an advisor only because he is too soft to say no, and that she's tired of him being useless if he doesn't do anything about Hanai, and she and the student council will expel him. Later that morning, Utera walks up to Kayak and her pet and says he needs to discuss something with them and asks them to come with him to the lab. He straight up tells them about the problem and explains that he's the Hanaka student council advisor, giving him a hard time, and says that ever since he transferred here for his second year of high school, he probably doesn't know what Ayaka was like in the first year. Then he explains that according to tradition, at the Autumn Cultural Festival, all students vote for the most outstanding student who will be their role model in Tetsu High School. Candidates are chosen based on their appearance, athletic achievements, charisma of attractiveness, and other criteria. The winner is called a prince or princess. Then he says that the problem is that when strange rumors start circulating about a student, everything becomes complicated, especially if a guy is involved. Hanoka tries to protect his reputation. Akio Churu says that it doesn't matter what their real ones or relationship because she doesn't belong to him. She belongs to the school, so would he be so kind? Stay away from her. Hanoka sadly thinks about this situation and Ayaka asks him to stop being sad. She says that this tradition originates from a legend and that says that a long time ago an angel came down from heaven and began to study along with ordinary people, so being a princess she occupies a high position. Kiyodashira confirms. Isen says that the hierarchy looks something like this: principal, princess, student council, teachers, and regular students. Being the daughter of the principal, Ayaka already holds the top 2 positions and no one can tell her what she can and cannot do. But the problem is that the student council can fire her, and Ayaka says that she has a plan and they just need to speed it up. KK Yushira says that he is glad to hear that she has a plan and then says that now they will move on to the real problem that he called them for. He takes out a magic tool and uses it to teleport about Noku and himself to another dimension. He tells him not to worry and then takes out a small ball that looks like a magic candy that Krav gave him. He says that it is a smaller copy and the real one must have been unpleasant when it got into his throat. Hanako wonders how he knows about the candy because he didn't tell anyone about it except Ayaka. Kyokushi explains that they are here because Hanako used one of these candies to summon the White Princess who is sealed inside him. He explains that there are 5 in total seals and one of them is already broken and he suspects that soon the headmistress will become his enemy. He says that the management of the workshop instructed him to look after her because she is a very strong witch. Thanks to her, he can live freely, provided that 5 seals remain untouched. Now one of them is broken and soon the rest will also begin to collapse and no one can stop this. The only decision is to seal the Noku with the help of the headmistress. But fortunately now she is busy with a jellyfish and does not know about the seals. But soon she will find out about them and the fact that they are hiding a jellyfish. He says that he wants to help him, and if it weren't for the princess, he would be his guardian and invites him to leave this and go with him. But Hanoka doesn't even think about it and then Ayaka breaks through the spatial barrier, sticks the dick into the ground and takes the nose of the dick. However, she survives thanks to the replacement technique and leaves after this. Ayaka brings the Hanak to the hall for the performance and asks him to announce to all the students so that they gather in the gym. When everyone arrives, she takes the stage and for the first time in Dot's history, shows interest in school politics. She gives a powerful speech about how she cares about the future of the school and says that she is removing the powers of the student council president and appoints Noka as her candidate for the post of new president. Then she herself becomes vice president and fires the previous vice president and his deputy. Kasumi doesn't like that Ayaka bosses her brother around and she decides to take him back by force. She's preparing traps and follows them after school and they both go to the toy store. Hanoka goes outside to get some air and Kasumi kidnaps him with the help of her bear, knocks Ayaka down with a car and puts her to sleep with injections. Then she makes the bear fly the plane she made by dismantling half of their house and says that they will run away into the forest and live there together. She says that she heard everything that the teacher told Hanoa and that soon the headmistress will become his enemy. Her daughter, too. Suddenly they notice a huge shadow above them and raise their heads to see that a dragon is flying above them, on which none other than the Flame Princess herself is sitting. And Ayaka decides to show them who the main character here and begins to shoot fire spells at them. Kasumi tries to dodge the attacks that destroy half the city and then crashes into a building and everyone falls and Ayaka jumps down and saves them, catching them and softening their fall. Then she takes them home and puts them to bed later. That night, Hanoka wakes up and apologizes to Ayaka for what his sister did, but Ayaka says that she's not offended because Hanoka just threw the car at her and put her to bed saying a few words. She even admires Hanoka for being such a caring sister and asks if she shouldn't also act like a little sister. Hanoka says that she'd rather be an older sister and they discuss it all night. In the end, Ayaka gets tired of it and she falls asleep. Hanoka puts her in his bed. Then he looks at their bags and notices that the toes that he bought for her and Kasumi were torn during yesterday's fight and is upset. Meanwhile, Komachi gets away from Kazana, who wants to talk with Ayaka and her son. The next morning Kazana comes to them, and together with Kamashi and Kasu goes shopping. Ayaka gets up early to prepare breakfast for Hano and himself and Hanoka wakes up and sees her in the kitchen. He is surprised how beautiful she is, sits down next to her and enjoys breakfast. In the background, we see there the priest and her gang who are staying in their house with the jellyfish and are trying to catch the Noka. They ask the jellyfish why are they so obedient to the princess and she answers they lost the battle according to all the rules and now must obey the winner. Besides, as long as their goals coincide, she does not need to do anything until the right moment, but if they still want to try, they can grab the Konak when the Ayaka is not around. Having heard this, they rise upstairs and wait for Ayaka to leave to kidnap Hanako, but to their surprise, the princess doesn't close her eyes and sits next to him all night and then leaves cooking breakfast. It looks like she also doesn't need as much sleep as a person usually does, and this is another fact about her. Meanwhile in the living room, Hanaka and Ayaka are talking about Kazan and his mother, and then they go to the laundry room together because it starts to rain. At that moment, Kazan and the others also return and Ayaka leaves them to greet the Hanaka goes to the bathroom to dry off and goes inside but sees that Mei and the other girls are coming out and grabbing him for being a pervert. They go out into the main hall and everyone is looking at them. Kazane puts the Kamashi to sleep to some and then talks about the Yaka that they are going to grab them and force them to tell where the jellyfish is. They both call their brooms, but instead of flying forward, Ayaka turns around, collides with his mother and says that he won't let her grab them. Kazana asks the Hanaka tell her to stop being selfish and that she can't do this anymore. Hanaka remembers Kyora's words and realizes that she really was hiding jellyfish and the others from her mother and decides to believe her and says that they cannot allow themselves to be captured. And Yaka Rogers screams at Jellyfish and says that they will make a deal now. Happily agrees, comes out of hiding and bites Ayaka, causing them to merge together. Ayaka briefly loses consciousness and sees the knowledge that explains what happened between them when Jellyfish attacked them in Ayaka's house. They entered into a contract so that Ayaka could gain strength to fight her mother, and Medusa would have a new successor to whom she could transfer her powers from that moment on. Ayaka promised to protect Medusa and her students from her mother until the right moment. It turns out that Kazanya still doesn't understand why Medusa teamed up with Ayaka and is talking some nonsense. Medusa laughs at her and they both start fighting. Kazanya attacks Ayaka with her broom. Ayaka blocks the blow and then turns her into stone with the help of his eyes, but Kazani grabs her by the collar and pushes her to the ground. Despite this, Ayaka turns her into a stone statue, gets up, and leaves apologizing. But then they hit her on the butt and Kazani, gathering all her will into a fist, breaks through the stone seal and grabs her again. She says that Ayaka thinks that this is all that is needed to defeat her and asks, isn't it strange that she is out of breath after one blow to the back? Then she explains that this is because the invulnerability granted to Vermilion has disappeared because she hates impurity and by teaming up with Jellyfish has become much weaker. Then she tells her that she needs to be ready for a fight, but Hinoka uses her strength to switch places with her and ends up getting hit instead of her. After a while, he wakes up in a prison cell where Ayaka is already located. She tries to burn the metal bars, but it is useless. She explains that they are in one of the cells to punish her mother and their fusion with the jellyfish has already ended. This is the worst case scenario because the jellyfish is now under interrogation and their secret is revealed. Then she says that her mother once told her that no matter what will happen, even if she dies, she must not allow the seals of the Hanak to be broken because as long as the seals are in place, she guarantees their protection in the school. But now that they are gone, they have lost this protection and the Hinoka has become a threat. She says that the only way to defeat her is her mother. She explains that she is a real athlete and, if they defeat her, she will definitely join them. The Hanaka remembers how they both got what they deserved from her and asks how they are going to do it, but Ayaka says that there is a way and it is connected with the power of the Hanaka. Meanwhile at school, Kazan is enjoying the game of checker with the Gar and asks her about the jellyfish. Kazan says that she was delighted that she could torture this snake, but then the witches from Rotenberg's workshop came and took her away because they received an official order from the headquarters and she had to surrender. She is angry and drinks tea thinking about how much fun it would be with a jellyfish. The school building explodes and she sees Ayaka and Hinoka standing on the rubble at the entrance to their prison. She flies outside and tells Ayaka how many times she asked her not to destroy the building, but Ayaka responds by pointing at her with a sword and saying that she will defeat her. Kazan asks she has to fight her and tells her to put on her uniform and get down from that stupid roof. She scolds them both for escaping from the prison and tells them go until and tomorrow. It will help her clean up all this mess. Ayaka and Hinoka return home and realize that Kazani did not find out about the seal and decide that everything will be fine if he does not find out that night. Hanaka and Ayaka sleep together and nothing happens between them because of their proximity to her. Hano dreams of a strange dream in which he sees memories from the past of Ayaka when Kazani hired the daughters of two witches to make friends with his daughter and look later. These two students became the first members of the Ayaka Club and took third place in the student council. Kane and Toka quickly became friends with Ayaka and realized that she does not know how to communicate with other people, but at the same time she is an amazing student in terms of charm in studies and sports. If you teach her that year, they began to admire her, fell in love with her character and created a whole group of ships, which ultimately led to her being appointed as a princess. One day Ayaka met Noku when he was walking down the street with his sister, and this meeting sparked something in her, and she went to her mother and said that she had finally found someone whom she had to protect at the cost of her life. So Ayaka became the protector of Hano. The next morning Kasumi wakes up and goes to the kitchen wondering what happened yesterday, and opens the door, and there the table is littered with gifts from the team there. To butt of missiles, Kasumi let them go because she was only interested in the jellyfish, and since they had nowhere to go, they decided to stay at their house. Yes, Kasu doesn't like that she goes, wakes up Noku, but again bumps into Ayaka, who this time is dressed in a nurse's uniform, and says that she is checking the condition of his seals after breakfast. They all go to school together, and it seems that everything is back to normal. Hano's locker is again filled with letters with threats and requests to resign from the student council, and he, as usual, gets D's in class even if he tries. During lunch, Hanoka and Ayaka go down to the cafeteria, but suddenly, they hear the sound of broken glass and run downstairs to see how some students are breaking everything and making a mess in the school. Soon the whole school turns into a lawless zone, where children are riding motorcycles, selling cigarettes, and all that. Panova asks what is happening, and Ayaka says that it looks like a riot there. The president of the student council intervenes and says that it is the Kanaka's fault, and then they see how Toko is pushed to the ground by a girl named Raymond. She gives Noki a letter in which she asks him to come to the gym at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and this clearly not like a friendly conversation. Toka says that last night, during her shift at the bar, she saw the former student council president come there with Renem, and she told her that the Kanaka took her place by force and now rules the school as a tyrant, and Ayaka only asks to meet her after school, and then during gym class she says that Renan is one of the 5 witches who protect the school and patrol it. She was called the Bear Killer because one day a tiger escaped from the zoo nicknamed Lucky Bear, and she strangled him with her bare hands. About 2 months ago she was suspended from classes for disorderly conduct. During lunch, Hanaka says that the headmistress should be furious about all this damage, but their dad says that she ran into a crown wire in the hallway, and it looks like the headmistress left on business and left her in charge for the day, and we all know that she doesn't care what happens at school at 3 o'clock. Hanaka decides to go to Gym 1, and Ayaka advises him on how to fight with Renan. As soon as he enters the building, he sees that the hall has turned into its own arena, and a huge crowd of students has gathered around who are cheering. But it turns out that Hanoka has been waiting for this moment all this time because Ayaka told him about it. Before entering, he follows her advice, uses his strength to increase the characteristics and knocks her down, and he ends up on top. Then he decides to hit her and put an end to all this madness. But then they blew it because it's 2014, and Knighthood is still held in high esteem at this moment. The light goes out, and Ayaka with her priest and her gang jump down. Ronan beats 3 witches, but Ayaka kills her with 1 blow to the face. After that she takes the rest of the girls and forces them to hold the Khan in a victory pose while they are in their invisibility cloaks, and then turns on the light again, and everything looks like he won. Ronan. In the end it turned out that Ayaka planned all this a week ago, and the former president invited her to return to the student advice if she helps make Han popular. They had a plan, as she went too far, got angry in Rin because of Hanaka. But despite this the results were great, and now he is considered a hero for defeating Sue Bears. His popularity on Google has reached a record level, and YouTubers are reacting to his victory, even received the approval of streamers such as AwesomeGold_ and Anime Man. This became a huge achievement for him as student council president. A few days later Ayaka takes Hanako to the roof of a very tall building and says that she will finally teach him to fight with magic. Hanaka asks, has she changed her mind after all? Before she refused to teach him because it could be dangerous, and Ayaka says that she knows that he secretly trained and that he is hiding something from her, and she doesn't like it. After that she summons a fire familiar and tells him to use his magic to fight him. The familiar releases fire breath and Hanaka falls on his ass. Ayaka tells him to use his magic to summon his familiar, but he, like everyone else, looks at her with the expression what the hell, and asks how to do this. The familiar attacks him, and he wounds his elbow, and Ayaka immediately stops everything, runs up to him, and asks if everything is okay with him. Hanaka gets up, pushes her away, and says that he needs a strict teacher so that he can study normally. Ayaka looks at him for a couple of seconds and then picks him up and throws him out of the window. She tells him to summon a familiar who can fly or rest in peace, and the Hanaka realizes that he dug his own grave falling. He is hit by a fiery familiar and the Ayaka also flies after him. A real cultured person, Avatar hits the building in front of them with his fist and sees Hiro-sensei drinking tea with a crown. She says that it was powerful magic and that he couldn't use it without breaking the second seal, and then asks where the cauldrons are because she left her capital and without her it's so boring. Meanwhile, the Hanaka falls asleep after using the magic and the Ayaka takes him home. On the other side of the cauldron examines the ancient rune of the explosion and an underground tunnel, and someone approaches her who says that Toko told him where she is. She asks what she was doing there. Irina replies that some witch calling herself the message of the tower came to them and gave her a message that she took everyone in the city hostage in a week. Ayaka and Hinoka go to school for an exam, and Kasane still not there, and she meets the tower's messenger. It turns out to be a witch named Weekend. Kasane says that she knows about the bomb and that Weekend came to negotiate with Nao Hana. Weekend looks at her and says that Kasa is wrong when she wants to take the Hanak and its towers. She did not come to negotiate. Then she explains that usually, if one witch attacks another, it will be a real battle, but if they try to attack an ordinary person, they will not be able to kill him. This is because the touch has put a huge protective barrier on all VH in the city. Every time someone gets injured, part of the magic of the Kasane is wasted and people are protected from harm. Usually a person cannot do such a thing, but thanks she can impose a huge reserve of mana and a high speed of formation and maintain this barrier forever. After that, she says what will happen if everyone in the city detonates a bomb at the same time. She is sure that the protection of so many people is depleted by the many ancient rune bombs that she placed throughout the city, and as she said, the whole city turns into ruins, and no one was hurt except the touch, which used up all her mana. She finds out that it was she who persuaded the Kasana to be left alone. Then she orders her companions to take her away and locks her in a cell, saying that she will need at least a week to restore all her mana, and this time will be enough to play with her students. Meanwhile, at the school, Ayaka notices explosions, grabs Hanaaku and runs to the underground witch's workshop. There they see Kasumi, who rushes to her brother and hugs him. They are met by Toko, Ina and several other Koto witches guarding the school, including their leader Natsume in a cactus named Torai, and Noka asks what is happening and they say that they will tell you. But then Natsume takes out a pistol and shoots Ayaka with sleeping bullets, like in American action movies. Hanaka falls asleep. Kasumi tries to protect them, but Rina knocks her out with one blow and then tells Hanaki that they must lock him up until they find out where the Kasane is and what the enemy wants. He decides to figure out the situation and follows them into the underground chamber with Ayaka inside. He notices that the ceiling is too high, but there is a hole in it for fresh air. He tries fly up to him on a broom, but for some reason cannot use magic. At this moment, Ayaka also wakes up and says that she was not careful, and this means that her mother lost. At that moment, Ato flies up to the ceiling, falls from the roof and projects a hologram on which the Weekend says that she finally found him and will soon take her new pet Noku. Seeing her face, Ayaka destroys the toy and the explosion collapses the wall behind them. She says that they will escape and they will defeat her, but for now they cannot use magic because the city is destroyed. After that, they get out of the city along the stairs that lead to the mountains outside the city and climb it for 2 hours. When they come out of the tunnel, they are greeted by the terrifying sight of the city destroyed and engulfed in fire. After seeing this, he loses his composure. Tanak-san blames himself for everything. He says that his mother and everyone else were at home, and now they are all dead because the enemy wanted to catch him. And Yaka standing next to him and says that this is normal and what no one die. She explains that this is an old custom. When a workshop opens, the head of the workshop enters into an agreement with the heart of the city. Thus a strong barrier is created over everyone who does not have magic. And when a situation occurs in which ordinary people may suffer, the city uses the magic of the contractor and protects them. In fact, the city uses the magic of the workshop to recover from any damage caused by magic, and since now the city is destroyed and there is no contractor, no workshop can use magic until a new contract is concluded. So to achieve their first goal, they will go to the city center and make him the new contractor so that the witches from the workshop can fight back from the other side of Nam, and The rest assess the situation and collect all the information. All the civilians have been evacuated and sent to a safe place, and the headmistress is in the hands of the enemy. No witch from the workshop can use magic because the city destroy, and it will take several more days before help arrives from the headquarters. In addition, after the explosions, many witches disappeared from the workshop, and then one of the missing witches breaks in and finds herself hung with time bombs. She says that Wind has captured them and is using them as hostages to force them to give up Noka, and they have half an hour to fulfill her demands, otherwise they will all explode. Meanwhile, Kasumi teams up with Popo and her gang there, and they are watching Wind, who is standing on the territory school. It's a bunch of witches from the workshop hung with time bombs there. The priest asks Kasumi what she wants them to do, and she replies that now they are the only witches who can use magic, and she will make sure that they work out their stay in her house. Meanwhile, Ayaka and Hinoka continue to walk through the tunnels to the center of the city, and they are approached by one of the weekend companions named Gibraltar. She uses her magic to create a stone golem and then hits them both into the ground with her massive stone hands. She grabs Ayaka and is about to deliver the final blow, but Ayaka jumps up and simply kicks her in the face. Gibraltar thought that a normal blow would not penetrate her armor, but it turns out that Ayaka can penetrate her defense despite the magic, and her mother taught her martial arts. She completely destroys Gibraltar and her stupid friend, and they continue to move forward in the underground workshop. Natsum tries to defuse the bombs manually, but there are only 18 minutes left, and they decide that it's time to move out. At this time, Kremura wakes up in her room and sees that the whole city has burned to the ground. She asks her partner what happened, and he explains that it was done by a witch named Weekend who told them about the Hanak. She says that this means that she defeated the Kazu, and she will not allow someone who is strong enough to defeat her to just leave. In the meantime, to the central department store, and the others come up to Wind and tell her to surrender. But she says that in 12 minutes they will die anyway, so they need to give up the Noku if they want to live a little longer. She says that in fact she is quite weak, but even if they defeat her they will not be able to stop the bombs. Hearing this, Kasumi wonders she is just an intermediary, and the real Orni of the explosions is someone else. With this thought, she runs down to find her partner who controls the bombs. Before the explosion, bombs only have a few minutes left, and Renong and the others run Kuan Kent with their fists, and then they feel that the magic returns. When the Hanaka successfully concludes the contract, and they immediately defuse all the bombs and knock the Ui Kent to the ground. After that they grab her and put her in a magic chamber, but she uses physical hand grenades that she hides under her clothes and breaks through the seal. She blows them all out with an explosion. She protects herself with the iron armor that she is wearing under her clothes, and then meets with her partner, explodes the remaining bombs and knocks out many witches from the workshop, and then calls Swan to come and save them if he can. Thanks to the contract, he hears her voice and sees how everyone is hurting and decides to use his powers to fight her. But Ayaka knocks him down and says that she herself will deal with her. On the other hand, Kasumi and the others find Win's partner and begin to fight with her, and Chrome War grabs her and forces her to tell where the Weekend is and what she's up to. After Ayaka knocked out Noku, she takes him to the school infirmary and lays him down on the bed to rest, but dreams about some past connected with his mother and Ayaki's mother. But he doesn't have time to find out anything because Ohira Sensei's key comes into his dream and pulls him into another dimension as before. He says that this is a special place where memories are stored. All the residents of the city, instead of making their own plans, he became the new contractor of the city and came here. Then he takes him into the elevator and explains that during the crisis, all civilians are evacuated here and they are stored like stars in the sky of this world. When the city returns to normal life, they will be released by erasing and edited their memories so that they do not remember anything about this incident. Hano VK asks about memory erasing, and he says that as a member of the Mikage family, he must erase and edit the memories of everyone in the city to keep their existence a secret. Meanwhile, Kasumi fights with his partner Vmount, who has copy magic that allows him to copy the magic of his opponents. Their battle turns into another episode of Attack on Titan where Kasumi the pink bear versus the black bear. They fight furiously and hit each other on the heads like crazy monsters, but it seems like Kasumi has the upper hand. Then they both get up and continue the fight, resulting in destroying part of the school building where the priest and the rest are there. Kasumi uses her bear to save one of them, but this gives the enemy a chance to throw her back, and it seems that they will not win. But then a jellyfish appears in her hot human body and turns the enemy into stone. Then she grabs her students and says that she must punish them for not being able to defeat such a weak opponent, and runs away with them while the witches of Rotenburg are chasing her, and Ayaka enters the nurse's office and asks how is the Hanaka. The nurse replies that he is strong, and this is because Ayaka forced him to use magic to make a contract with the city, and Ayaka says that she completed her mission and tells her that Cromer wants witches in the city, and then adds that it's none of her business and she shouldn't worry about Hanako, and Ayaka thanks her and asks her to stay with Hanako and while she fights wine and puts an end to this madness. Then she asks for her sword and flies off to the church where the weekend awaits her. She immediately rushes on him, but the explosion throws her back. The weekend explains that, unlike her and Kazan, he does not have any absurd abilities, so she prepared bombs and placed them all over the city to use at any moment, and that everything around is mine and she has no chance against her. After that, they continue to fight, and when Ayaka weakens the wine, she blows up the ceiling, which falls on her. Ayaka is injured, but still gets up using fire magic. They continue to fight, and Ayaka manages to win. She is in close combat, but then an explosion throws her towards the door and she uses a bunch of huge magician dolls to attack her in the school. Hanaka and Kara is attacked by one of the weekend companions, and Kara uses magic to send Hanako back to the real world. Hanaka wakes up and tells Torai about the Ayak, but due to the high temperature she goes back to bed. At this moment he receives a call from Ket. She says that over the weekend a time bomb was planted in this world and they must defuse it, otherwise all the evacuees will die, and Torai decides to help Noki and takes him to the kayaks. They arrive just in time to see Ayaka lying on the floor defeated. Hanaka hugs her and says that there is a bomb that will kill everyone and they must defeat the weekend, and asks her to use her powers. Ayaka, as this and literally wipes the weekend off the face of the earth. She asks where the bomb is, but the weekend says that it is too late and detonates the bomb. Everyone dies in front of the Hanaka and he gets up trying to use the powers again of her, and Ayaka tries to stop him, but he loses consciousness and falls to the ground. In his sleep he meets Vermilion again and she says that he has already returned, although she asked him not to get into a situation where he has to rely on her strength. She says that she knows why he is here and that he wants to restore all the buildings and lands that were lost during this time. Then she says that it is possible, but for such a big desire will require equal compensation. He asks what he can offer her in return and she says that his life, but then he says that if she takes his life under the contract, then Ayaka will also die. He thinks about it for a minute but then says that there is no other way out. He enters into a contract with her and agrees to give his life in exchange for the return of everyone the rest, and uses her power to the fullest, and that's how we see that everything returns to its place. The city is restored and everyone returns to normal life as if bombs had never happened, and Ayaka hugs him and he apologizes to her for giving his life and according to the contract hers to for all this to happen, and she says that she will not let him die like this. She gets up, calls Vermilion and says that she will give her life instead of him. Suddenly her magical form disappears and she falls to the ground unconscious, and Hanako remains alive, but before he can pay for her loss, he is wounded in the back by Ui Kent, who was also restored thanks to his wish. She tells him that he ruined her plan, and now all she has left is a knife. You don't need to cry for her because he can meet her in the afterlife right now. Hanako gathers her courage and pushes the knife out of herself. After that he punches her in the face like all these fighters for equality, and then sits on top of her, takes out a knife and stabs it into the ground next to her head, saying that he will end her life and no matter how many times she will use her evil plans to make his life unbearable, he will always defeat her and destroy her plans. After this heroic speech, she falls from his blow and decides to leave him alive, tells her partner to patch him up in her hideout, but they are met by the Chrono Wire and her crocodile, and they take her with them for a walk while everyone is back and happy. The Hanaka cries over the body. Ayaki enters and receives a call from Kara, who says that everything is fine and they successfully completed the task, but Hanaka is too upset to think about it and tells him everything what happened after listening to his story. Q says that something is wrong here because usually only performers can fulfill the requirements of the contract and not someone else. This means that Ayaka could not just give her life in exchange for his. Hamamov notices that there is something wrong with her body too, because although she is not a breathing body, still warm. He says that he would like to try something and, maybe, it will be able to bring Ayaka back to life. He tells Torai to create a magic circle and place Ayaka in it. He says that maybe Ayaka is in this state because she forcibly broke their contract, and in order to return her he will have to make a new contract with her. He tells Torai to cut his hand and drop some blood on her chest and then kiss her. Hanaka does everything as he said, and to his surprise it is the hardest for him, it's a kiss and not a cut on his hand. He tries his best to kiss her on the lips, but ends up kissing her on the forehead. Some time passes and Ayaka actually comes to life and begins to breathe. After that, Hanaka returns to her dream world to talk to Vermilion and ask her about what happened. She tells him about the contract she made with Ayaka, and they were children, and according to him, if he ever died or asked her for help, she would break their contract and let him use her tower to support her life. It seems that the Hanaka restore everything himself, and when Ayaka broke their contract, she did not need to give him her powers. So their agreement was terminated. Bear challenges him to a one-on-one duel and, in the end, she destroys him as some kind of minor character who was put against the main character in the tournament. She is disappointed in her and says that she spent a lot of effort to find a strong opponent and she turned out to be so weak. She says that perhaps she would get even at the scene and said that laughs to take the villainess for herself. The weekend asks how she feels because it should take another 5 days to restore her mana, but Kaz's mana was executed. It took only 20 hours. She asks why she didn't come earlier and Kaz replies that she wanted the children to have fun, so she decided not to interfere and now she came to restore order with these words. She turns to Crown, Wire and the Weekend who are arguing about who will torture her. They both rush at each other and, if no one noticed this before, now they are probably the strongest people in the show. Their battle lasts only a few minutes. They exchange powerful blows, but as usual the next morning Hanaka wakes up in his room, and Ayaka tells him good morning and asks him to get ready for school. On the way Hanaka asks how she is feeling and she replies that she will need time to regain her magical powers, but she is fine without them. After that they come under fire from the team there, and they decide to do what they usually do, and they want to capture Noku, but Ayaka shows them that she is still the main heroine of this world even if she has no magic.